great. Yeah, so pause the recording.
Great. All right. Good afternoon. This is November 15th, 2022 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Let's start with introductions of the commissioners. So, Julie, can we get started?
Sure. I'm Julie Johnson. I'm a Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I was nominated by the community at large.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
I'm Kelly Wemple. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
And I'm Erin Hummel. I'm a landscape architect, and I was nominated by the American Society of Landscape Architects.
I'm Graham Johnson, Preservation Project Manager, nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Great.
I'm Jessica Petto, Landmark Preservation staff.
All right, so we have two meeting records on our agenda today for approval, the October 28th and November 1st meeting records. So did anyone have any comments? October 28th was just our emergency meeting to reschedule or to extend the deadline for process, and then our last meeting. Any questions on minutes, comments?
I know we've gone through this many times before, but we were not at our emergency meeting.
You can vote on it. We can vote on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I believe was the case, but we both passed, so.
Oh, really? I thought you had to abstain. Oh, okay.
If you want to break it into two and abstain, that's totally fine too.
Well, but for meeting records, we only need a majority vote, right?
Right.
Correct.
Madam Chair, I will move to approve meeting records for October 28th and November 1st, 2022.
Grant, I will second that. Julie. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes unanimously and the meeting records are approved. All right, at the beginning of every Landmark Preservation Commission meeting, we like to leave time for public comments. This is not for any project that we're going to see in our design review portion today, because there will be a separate comment period at that time. But if you would like to make a comment on preservation matters in general, now's the time to do it. If you're joining us by phone, please dial *9. And if you're joining us via the computer, use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen.
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
And is anyone joining us?
Thanks. So, no, it doesn't look like it.
I won't keep repeating that then. Okay. And here are just some audio tips if you're joining us via Zoom today. So for better sound quality, you can go ahead and download Zoom directly and you can use the audio settings. There's an additional menu under audio settings where we recommend you open up and add the background noise suppression. That's going to help if we're moving papers around or something, if you're going to be able to hear things a little bit clearer and not have that overwhelm your audio. And then for anyone joining, test your speaker and microphone to make sure that the volume is up so that we can hear you. So we're going to start with our consent agenda items. So these items will not be reviewed if we all vote them passed. These are items that staff have seen to meet the guidelines. Did the commissioners have any questions for staff on these? Anything that needs to be pulled off consent? And if not, would someone like to make a motion?
Sure, Madam Chair, I'll do the motion. I move to approve the consent agenda as presented, including 2022-COA-489 at 155 Gilpin Street in Country Club, 2022-COA-490 at 435 Ray Street in Country Club, 2022-COA-442 at 118 West Ellsworth Avenue in Baker neighborhood, 2022-ZLAM at 770 Olive Street, Montclair, and 2022-TAXC-012 at 2432 Grove Street in Winter, Colville.
Thanks, Julie.
I'll second.
Thank you, Greg. Second. All right. There's no further discussion. Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. So if you're joining us today for one of the projects that was on the consent agenda, your project has been approved, and you can feel free to hop off unless you'd like to join us for the rest of the meeting.
And I'd also like to point out, so that was Bridget's first Landmark Preservation Commission meeting item. So Bridget, congratulations. May they all be as good as this one.
All right. So we do need to set one public hearing before we move into design review. We're not reviewing anything today. So that's for 2022-LM Demo-521 at 415 Clarkson Street. Looks like there's a total demolition requested. So we need a public hearing. It's recommended for December 20th. Someone like to make that motion?
I can make the motion.
Great.
Madam Chair, I move to set a public hearing for application number 2022 LMPDMO-521 415 Clarkson Street for December 20th, 2022.
Thank you, Ann. All set. Aaron? Right. There's no further discussion. Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, the motion passes unanimously. So we'll see that project on December 20th for their hearing. Okay, so now we're ready to move into our design review projects for the day. The process for design review is that I'll announce the project, and then staff will go ahead and introduce the application, provide their recommendation, after which we'll hear from the applicant, who has up to 10 minutes to present. You can take as much or as little of that time as you need. After we've heard from the applicant, we'll open it up for public comments. So public comment period is 2 minutes per person, and you can go ahead and use the hand raise button at that time if you'd like to comment on the project. Once we've heard from everyone, the commission will move into deliberation and vote. All right, so the first project on our design review today is 2022-COA-494 at 2907 Welton Street.
So I have 3 staff members who are out vacation. So I'm going to cover for Brittany, Jesse, Brittany, and Crystal today. So you will see me, and I've just put my screen on so members of the public can see me. That's why they're not up there. Because these are not my projects, I have a script. So the applicant is proposing to construct a new 6-story infill building at the corner of Weldon Street and 29th Street in the 5 Point Historic Cultural District. The proposed infill will be affordable housing with retail on the ground floor. The 5 Point Historical Cultural District is designated for its historical and geographic significance. This cultural district is made up of 98 parcels and approximately 80 buildings, 9 of which are contributing structures. Here you can see the proposed floor plans and the building locations within the district. The primary retail entrance will be on Welton Street and the residential entry on 29th Street. So let's see. This is Welton Street and this is 29th Street. The building is across the street from a closed light rail station. Activities within the public right-of-way are not within the purview of the Landmark Preservation Commission. Try to get it to move. There we go. The front facade along Welton Street shown here is 150 feet and broken down into vertical bays of plus or minus 25 feet with storefronts and retail entries. The building base massing steps down from 4 stories to 3 stories towards the north property line, creating varying sense of heights at the building base, which is common on the main street character building within the district. A 10-foot setback from above the first floor is used to allow for windows on the north property line, and a 5-foot setback above the building base is used on 29th Street. A 5 to 10-foot setback is required along the street, side street and interior lot. Pictured here is the 29th Street elevation. This elevation shows a 10-foot upper story setback from Welton Street and a 15-foot setback above the ground floor along the alley. Due to the building's proximity to a protected district as defined by the Denver zoning code, there's also a 15-foot rear setback required on the upper level above the first floor along the alley. The building will violate the setback requirement along the alley in order to achieve the 10-foot upper story setback along Belton Street. However, landmark staff feel that the preservation of the 3 to 4 story building base along Belton Street is significant and encourage the applicant to pursue a historic hardship recommendation before the Board of Adjustment to preserve the 10-story upper floor setback along Belton Street and violate the zoning required setback along the alley. Although the building does encroach into the protected district setback, it will not negatively impact the Curtis Park Historic District as the alley is 16 feet wide and the building is 2 feet off the rear property line. And all floors above the ground floor will be set back an additional 15 feet. Staff are recommending that the commission recommend a historic hardship variance to the Board of Adjustment. This looks like the rear addition. So pictured here is the rear addition in which the building articulation continues. Additionally, parking on the ground floor will be screened from the right-of-way along the alley. At the north elevation, the ground floor will not have any window openings as it will be built to the property line. However, the 10-foot setback along the north property line allows for the horizontal and vertical articulation to continue above the ground floor. A section of the building shows the proposed ground floor will be retail with residential above. The commercial ground floor will have the exterior appearance of 16 feet height. The residential floors above will be 10 feet to 8 feet 6 inches high. Within 5 points, mixed-use buildings typically have a taller first floor with smaller upper floor height. The upper floor-to-floor heights are compatible with other infill structures within the historic cultural district. That has simple rectangular forms and typical entry locations. Interior uses and how those uses are allocated are not within the purview of the Landmark Preservation Commission. It is common for new development within the district to have activated ground floors with residential above. This parcel is currently zoned CMX 5. In order to address Denver's lack of affordable housing, the City and County of Denver passed measures to expand housing affordability on July 21st, 2022. Additionally, Section 10.12.1.1B of the Denver zoning code allows an increase in height to 6 stories or 95 feet to the general building form if providing affordable housing. At 70 feet, the building is well below the max height allowance in the Denver zoning code. In order to address the increase in height, the building base has been increased from 3 stories to 4 stories. Standard 4.4 states that 8-story buildings should have a 4-story building base. The standard was developed to address the CMX 8 zone district of 5 Points Historic Cultural District. Prior to the standard, new construction had a 3-story building base with 5 stories above. The community expressed concern that the new development in the district is out of proportion with itself. The increase in the building base height allows for a more proportionate development while maintaining a contextual relationship with a strong corner presence of the historic buildings within the district. While the building is not an 8-story building, with the additional 6 floors, staff feel that an increase in the base building height or the building base height at corner maintains the intent of this standard and intent statements for H, for I, for J, for K, and for L, which encourage creative facade design, preserving the Main Street character of the district, promoting and highlighting the scale of contributing buildings within the district, and providing access to sunlight and view. Additionally, the Hooper at 26th and Wells also features an additional 9th floor above the CMX 8 zoning. This project was reviewed and approved by the LPC in 2018. And one more bit. Finally, the ground floor is activated, also chamfered at the corner, similar to the Rissonian, the Atlas Drug Building, Radio Pharmacy, and Equity Savings shown here. The 4-story building base and building chamfer at the corner helps reinforce the corner, a common building element found in the contributing buildings within the district. The staff are recommending approval of the mass form and context of the building because we feel it's compatible with the contributing buildings and the new construction within the district. Additionally, the upper story setback violation along the alley allows for the preservation of the 10-foot setback along Belton Street, creating a strong building base and a pedestrian-friendly experience. I will say you all received public comment. We emailed that to, just in case the public didn't know that, that we forwarded that to you all. A lot of the comments in that document were associated with use and the use of the building, the parking of the building, and the economics of the building, and that is not your purview. So what is your purview is the design and the compatibility of the building with the historic context based on the guidelines.
Thank you. All right, and actually, I have a follow-up question to that. So they did mention in that letter, that the project leader, RTD, has not resolved an abandonment on the 29th Street light rail station.
Yeah, there's a close light relocation there. Okay.
Real close.
Okay. But that's not in entire public right of way. It's not part of this.
And then they also said, you know, are they, basically, it sounds like they haven't met with neighbors and taxpayers, and aren't info projects required to meet with the R&O? So have they met with the R&O?
Yes, so I was doing, this is not my project, I'm trying to remember. They have met with the R&O, or we referred them to the R&O, and because there is an R&O that is active doing design review in this area.
Okay. And we don't have comments.
I don't think so.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question. I know that in mass form and context, we look at the size and configuration of openings. Is it possible to find out more about the actual operation of the window operation in this phase, or is that something that has to wait for the next phase?
That's usually a design detail one. I think it's worth asking a question, but they might not have that answer yet.
Thank you.
And my last question is about the height, because the letter we received had a lot of questions about the height. So this doesn't seem out of scale to what we've approved in the area though, right?
So this parcel is zone CMX 5, so they can do 5 stories. And across the street, or in other parcels, is CMX 8.
Yeah.
So they can do 8 stories. What Brittany wanted me to point out to you all is the fact that there is that expanding housing affordability that was approved by City Council, so they are allowed additional heights because of that. So they should go up to 95 feet high, and this is 7. I might have said 95 inches because that's what it said. It was 95 feet, sorry. That would not make any sense.
Any other questions? No? All right, do we have the applicant present?
Yeah. Stop sharing. I'm gonna pull up the really fast timer. Sorry. Oh, there she is. She's a little. I didn't know this was going to be so touchy. It's super touchy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, she said they're in a conference room.
Can you hear us?
I just muted you. Yeah, so there's a lot of feedback going on. So you'll have to make sure that your speakers are also off, that you can unmute when you're ready.
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, it's much better.
Can you hear us?
Yeah. Yeah, we can. So
We're
go
having a
ahead and
little
get
tech
started.
difficulties. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear us.
Go ahead.
Please start with your name and address. You have up to 10 minutes.
Hello, I'm Jeff Shanahan with Shanahan Development, developer of proposed developer of the 29th and Walton Street project. I'll give a quick overview of the project, and then I will hand it over to the architects to talk more about the design. So this is a partnership with RTD, City of Denver, and Elevation Community Land Trust to build right now we're projecting 62 affordable home ownership units on this site. I believe we're about 34% of the units will be 3-bedroom, roughly 30% will be 2, and the balance will be 1-bedroom units to help achieve the city's goal of getting family units on the site. And I think the big request we have is for support on the alley setback. And this is helpful for us and for Host, because if we do not have that setback, we lose a significant amount of the 3-bedroom units. And they get cut down to 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom units, which is not the city's goal nor our goal. Our goal is to provide more bedrooms in this area for family style units. So the project will be set up as a community land trust. Elevation Community Land Trust will hold the land trust and monitor the affordability on the project in perpetuity. It is a 99-year ground lease that permanently restricts the units to be affordable housing. So this isn't a short-term affordable housing project. And it's also home ownership, which there are not many projects like this in town. And we're trying to build equity within the community through home ownership. So that's, and real quick too, so Host, the state of Colorado, and Elevation all put in grant money for this project to work. And so those are project partners, and I'll kick it over to the architects to talk about the design.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff, and thank you for having us at your meeting and hearing our case today. I want to also start by thanking the staff, the iHeart team, the CPD and LPC staff have been extremely helpful in guiding us through this process and expediting our application. So I just want to acknowledge it. I also want to thank Brittany for her very thorough staff report. I don't want to repeat the elements that she pointed out in her report. It's also included in our application, the design elements and detailed review of the context and how our building fits in a historic district is outlined in our application. I want to zoom out a little bit to a bigger picture and talk about guiding principles for infill construction in the 5 Points district. Those are found on page 58 of the design standards and guidelines. And there's 5 of them. The first one is protection. Protect and respect the character cultural district is the first guiding principle. I don't want to go for the detailed list, like I said, but just want to hit on the big kind of massing and proportions of the building. We study both 3- and 4-story datum line and how it fits both in the context of the district, but also in the specific location. We arrived at the solution that we think is elegant and addresses the context. The building steps from 4 to 3 to 2-story in adjacent building along Welton Corridor, and the 4-story element on the corner creates a strong air anchor and creates a sense of place and a strong urban element, which we think is consistent with a district. The second guiding principle is rehabilitation. Design infill construction to rehabilitate the cultural character of 5 Points. This site is currently a surface parking lot. It's a void, a kind of a missing tooth in the urban fabric. It has been like that for at least 3 decades, as far as we know, and we believe that this infill is going to be a huge asset and enhancement and to the rehabilitation of the district. The third guiding principle is cultural identity, contribute to 5 Points and Denver's sense of place. We believe that our design is subordinate and respectful of existing context. It's a contemporary interpretation of existing buildings' proportions, scale, and character. It's not a replica. It's also not trying to create a false historic character or replicate an existing style. Therefore, we believe that it's an enhancement to cultural identity of the district and Denver overall. The fourth principle is vitality. Attract people to 5 Points with active streets and building uses. This building is gonna be affordable housing, affordable retail space, and is also enhancement to the streetscape along Welton Corridor and 29th Street. There's 62 units, 40% of them are families, so new families are gonna move to the area and the district. The affordable retail is really important to note because the entire ground floor is dedicated to what's gonna be either a grocery store or culturally focused nonprofit or similar activity, which is consistent with the district, and again, a big asset for the community. And finally, notable streetscape with streets along Welton and the tree lawn along 29 Street are enhancements to the environment for both pedestrians, residents, retail, and the area overall. And finally, last criteria is sustainability. This building is going to be all electric. We're building not to the current code, we're building to the future energy code, recognizing that this is going to be a permanent affordable housing with 100-year ground lease with effort on permanency. This building is designed to last with high quality materials, brick, storefront, and the energy enhancements of the energy systems that we're implementing or planning to implement are going to make sure that the building lasts for decades, if not hundreds of years. So this building builds on the tradition of Alta Cousins Terrace, build high quality, affordable housing that will last for centuries. And we hope for your approval today, and we're ready to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I don't believe we got your name. Could you mention your name and address for the record?
Oh, they can hear you. Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. We did not get your name. Could you mention your name and address for the record?
Yeah,
I don't know if you heard, my computer went to sleep accidentally. I don't know if you heard at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, we heard the end of the presentation. We just need your name and address for the record.
can't hear anybody talking if they are. I think the web building's muted, web video's muted.
Yeah, can you not hear us at all? Can you hear us? No? That's very odd. Do you want to try, should I like mute and unmute it? Yeah, try it.
Jen, I'm hearing you the room fine. This is Abby. I can hear you the room fine.
Right.
Okay, can you hear us now?
We can hear you now.
Okay, great. I just need your and address for the record.
I'm sorry. Name? My name is Gosha Kang. I'm with KTGY. And I live at 2031 Grove Street in Denver.
Great, thank you. Okay, are there any questions for the applicant?
Hi, I'm Ann. I have a question for you. Sorry, we're having technical issues here. That's better.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. My question has to do with guideline 4.7C and its door and window locations and proportions. And my question for you is that all of the contributing buildings in 5 points are basically bearing wall brick buildings. And your design has actually, it looks a little bit more like more opening than actually solid. So my question has to do with the window, if you know anything, because the windows are so predominant, the openings are so predominant. And I understand this is mass forming context and not design detail, but I think it might help to know a little bit about what you're thinking about the window operation.
I don't know that we have selected the windows yet. We're definitely going to bring that detail when we come back for our second presentation. I do want to speak a little bit to the detail around the windows and the punched openings. I mean, we're definitely planning traditional construction with brick veneer. So our renderings right now are preliminary, and they may show walls are as more smooth or uniform surface, but the windows will be recessed into the wall assembly, just like what you would see in the traditional buildings on Welton. And I hope that answers your question.
Thanks. Are there any other questions? All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Okay, let's open this up. Public comments. Is there anyone on the line who would like to make a comment? If so, please use the hand raise button at this time.
Yep, we've got Keith. Hold on, I'm juggling.
All right. Keith, you'll have up to 2 minutes. Please start with your name and address for the record. You know how it goes. Whenever Jen says go.
Yeah, except you're not.
Can you hear me?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Keith Pryor, 2418 Champa Street, the chair of the Welton Street Design Review Committee. We did meet with the applicant on the Welton corridor for this, but we did not get our comments submitted because we didn't know it was going to be this quick for it to be before you. So sorry about that. We do have a little bit of questions for the commission, mainly just on 4.7C and 4.9 in regards to the corner elements. We think that the window rhythms throughout the building are really great, but that corner element does have larger windows on it, and it does have a different window pattern than the rest of the building. And so we're just kind of wanting you to kind of look at that and see what your thoughts are, if it should continue to maintain the window pattern that's established on the existing building, or if that corner itself should have a different element to it. We do like the chamfer corner on the first level. There were some discussions back and forth that we could not resolve on if it should be floating or if it should have the post that was originally designed. The applicant did listen to a lot of our concerns and did make a lot of great additions to the building as far as the datum lines go for the 3 and 4 stories, which we greatly appreciate. And overall, we definitely do support the mass and scale for this project and request the commission does approve it to move forward. Curtis Park Neighbors does have concerns with the rear setback because we do have 2 adjoining historic districts and we do have a protected district. We feel that there is some precedent being broken here, but given the community benefit of an all affordable unit, there may be some consideration there. But we do not want the precedent set for a front setback to encroach into a rear setback, and how we basically resolve those conflicting issues between a front and rear setback based on zoning versus historic. And we look forward to having that conversation going forward on other projects. Thank you.
Lynn, you are up next. So when you are, Taylor allows you to mute, just go ahead.
2955 Welton Street. Lynn Brenning, 2955 Welton Street. And I'm concerned about height and setting precedent that the project has excess parking. It has more parking than required. And if that were brought to regulations, would the height be able to be reduced? And would that help the project meet all of the requirements? And also, I understand it's not your view of what's happening with abandoned light rail stop but for 10 years, the immediate neighbors, of which I'm one, have contacted the applicant multiple times requesting information, requesting resolution, and we've not gained any traction. If you can please, as the commission, direct me to whom I would actually speak to this resolve, that would be appreciated. The abandoned station does nothing except cause blight in the historic district. And I chair the Welton Corridor RNO, and there are multiple RNOs along Welton Street, and the developer may cherry pick whom they speak with. I did not find out about this project until I began to unpack through zoning and learned about the project that way, even though I've multiple times requested for information. What I'm really concerned about may not be your purview. If you could provide assistance, and if the commission could look into how the height could be reduced if parking was brought into regulation, that would be helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lynn. Are there any other comments?
Yes, trustee just raised their hand. Go ahead when you're ready. Yep.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you. My name is Chessie Brady. I live at 2631 South Jackson Street in Denver. I work for RTD and have been working with the city on this project for the past 6 years. And RTD is really excited to see this project moving forward. We believe that.
So you're part of the applicant team then, if you're working on the project, is that right?
I suppose so. I don't know how you define it. We are. It's the Shanahan Elevations project that happens to be on RTD land until we sell it to them.
Yeah, so you're part of the project team, but there was 2 minutes and 7 seconds left, so let's let you continue on, because that was for everyone's benefit, there was 2 minutes and 7 seconds left of the applicant's time. And so since this is a 2-minute public comment section, we'll just transfer this so that there's 7 seconds left total for the applicant.
Yeah, so typically we don't, public comments are for people who are not part of the project team. So, so anyway, we'll just use the leftover applicant time, as Jen had mentioned. So you can go ahead and continue.
Got it. Thank you for the flexibility. And thank you to the staff again for working so thoroughly on this project. It's a very innovative project. It's it's a complicated site and very difficult to do affordable homeownership in general. And RTD feels very secure in working with Shanahan and Elevation, in that they're using right materials. They're very conscientious towards the landmarks requirements, and they're also very conscientious about the future owners of the units. And we appreciate the effort that they are putting into making sure that they're meeting everybody's needs. So just I'll leave it there, but we appreciate your time and support this application. Thank you.
Great. Are there any other public comments at this time?
See other hands raised? No.
Okay.
Yeah, Chessie was already, that was our last speaker. That was the last, yeah, right.
So could we maybe circle back on a couple of Lynn's comments, since she asked some questions?
Yeah, and can I just address one of them? So she made a comment about the RNO, and people picking and choosing who the RNO, which RNOs they go to. So we put out a call every year. It's usually in February for people to sign up, maybe in March for people to sign up for RNO to do design review. They have to go through training for design review training, and then in May or June we finalize the list, and that is a list for that 12-month period. Liz did it in 2021 for the Welton corridor, but did not sign up in 2022. So that is why we did not formally refer. It was not required that the applicants went to the RNO that Lynn chairs. But the RNO that Keith chairs did sign up and did go through the training, and so that is why it was referred to the RNO that he represents. Yeah, he represents two of them actually. The Belton Street one, by the way, one.
And about her comments on how to reach out or who to contact about the addition. I mean, that's not under landmarks purview, so I mean, we don't have any, I don't know, recommendation of how to find more information about any of the other holdings that they have.
Correct. I'm not, we have not worked closely with RTD on any projects because they're all right-of-way projects. So I don't have any contacts there.
Okay.
Other than Chelsea now.
And is it possible, because I forgot to ask this question to the applicant, is it possible to ask the applicant one more question about the parking?
Yeah, if you want to.
I know that, number of parking spaces is a zoning issue, but I just wanted to ask the applicant about kind of following up with the question about parking. Yep. So I think we've gone ahead and unmuted you. So if you could, I was just wondering if you could answer the question, do you have more parking spaces than required by zoning? And if so, could you kind of explain that? Were there any measures investigated to reduce the building size?
Yeah, so we feel like the building is underparked, based on other projects in the city. And the goal for this project, again, through HOST, was to incorporate family units, which is why we have a high number of 3-bedroom units. 21 units right now. There are 3-bedroom units. I'm a father of 2. I have 2 kids that do separate things. And so I don't know how I would take care of them. There's 1 car, get to all their sporting events and stuff. And so we felt it necessary to at least have parking spaces for the 3-bedroom units in this neighborhood. And we realize that it's very walkable with schools and the rec center across the street. But we still feel there's a need for a car for families. And that's kind of where we came up with this parking count.
And so how many parking spaces do you have total?
30.
30. And what's required by zoning? Just curious.
So zoning code does not require any parking because of the incentives baked in affordable expanding housing affordability. I mean, typically project like that, if it wasn't for affordability, incentives would require 0.75 space per unit. Given that this is a for sale development, we think that there's a market demand for some parking. We're not parking it at the ratio that would be required for standard development, market rate development. But we're also not going as low as the affordability incentives allow us. We're somewhere in the middle. Parking is always controversial. It's surprising that we're arguing in this position, trying to find reasons for usually community demands more parking. I mean, we're trying to kind of find a happy medium and again, satisfy market demand for some parking on site.
Understood. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. We ready to move into deliberation? All right, let's go ahead and do it. So how did everybody feel this met the guidelines, and knowing that we do have specific 5 Points Historic Cultural District guidelines that are very different than typical design guidelines for other districts? I could go ahead and start since I asked so many questions about the parking. I only did that to follow up with the public comments that we had. I don't think it looks like this is over parked. If anything, it seems very under. So and I understand and appreciate the need for family units in the city, because a lot has been done to do like studios and one bedrooms, and it's really hard to find multifamily units for families. So I think all of that is outside of our purview. That's all zoning issues. But I understand where the applicant's coming from, and I tend to agree with the staff report and analysis of how this is meeting the form. I don't see the height as being a concern, given the context of the site and the adjacencies of the CMX 8 areas and CMX 5. I think that they did do a sensitive job of kind of articulating the facades to kind of relate to those spaces. So overall, I'd be in support of the project. And did you want to talk about the windows a bit?
Yes.
Are you, just so I understand where the question is coming from, is it the large windows on the corner or all the windows in general?
It is all of the windows in general, understanding that we're looking at mass form and context, and that's why it's very difficult to separate them out, because there's so many of them that if all of those were fixed windows, that would give a character to the building. But if they were all double hung windows, that would be a completely different character. And so I understand, that's why I'm trying to sort of sort that out, understanding that that is not in our purview right now. I think that this is, an incredibly laudable project, but there are things about it that concern me because it sets a precedent when, our purview is not who is the developer, what is the purpose of the building. And to me, this building looks very generic. It doesn't, and maybe again, this is because in the design detail, that will be filled in. But, I'm looking at guideline 4.7, and I'm also sort of looking again at the 5 points, trying to understand how the cultural identity is met in this particular project. And my concern is, again, do you have sheet number 20 by any chance, part of this? Which is kind of a sheet, or I don't know if we have, because I have sheet number 20, which is the last one, shows kind of the aerial view of the sheet. And when I look at sheet number 20, do you have it? I'll pull it up. You pull it up. It concerns me, not because I don't think that this project is doing everything it's trying to do, but it just concerns me as a precedent to projects that are developed by others. Look at this. And, I think part of it is that base sort of stops, base which is so effective, so effective in this as a scaling mechanism, which is exactly what is required. But then it sort of stops, and when you pull back from it, it's just a little concerning. This one, exactly. I don't know what other commissioners think.
Yeah,
Well, I raised an interesting issue. You're accidentally or on purpose, I'm not sure. But when you look
It was on purpose.
when you look at sheet 20, and you talk about cultural identity. Well, it was a 2-story street front street. And while if you go further southwest on, you do see more recent development that is like this. But in between that development and this development, everything is 2 stories. Understanding, though, also that there are probably sites that can be developed in the future that can help fill in the spaces. But if you just look at this image on sheet 20, it seems out of character with the neighborhood as it exists right now. I'm not sure that that's enough to say that this building needs to be smaller, because it does meet zoning code. It does meet some overall community objectives in terms of providing affordable housing. And I think it meets the guidelines. My problem with the massing is the floating corner on 29th and Welton, and that large kind of aperture of unknown material that kind of breaks the load-bearing masonry pattern. So while I understand the massing versus existing context, I think well, it's going to develop over time on some of these other sites, and the zoning is going to allow larger buildings. Like, there's some previous projects a little further south where we had 5 feet wide or 50 feet wide, and they shot up 4 stories. Those were more jarring in terms of compatibility with context than this is. So I think fixing the corner so that it looks like a masonry building. I like the chamfered entry, but I do think that corner has to be supported somehow. And then maybe, I don't know what else. Most of the windows don't bother me if they're subdivided to look like double hung windows, whether they are or aren't, but they need to be subdivided. And I'm particularly interested in how the corner windows are developed because it looks like it's a huge square of glazing and a small rectangular square of glazing, kind of they call it Chicago style windows. It depends on how those are detailed and how that then might fit into the overall context.
I think you both brought up something really interesting with that, and I do want to just clarify, when I said the context, I meant in this district, there are so few contributing structures, and we've seen so much development that I know what we're allowing is much different than what is currently there. And so I guess when I was looking at it, I was seeing as, part of the development of the neighborhood, because so few of these structures are contributing, unlike in our other districts where we're typically looking at a spare lot between historic buildings, and those aren't going to change. This is so subject to change, and so that's why I wasn't bothered by the height, but I do agree with you. Right now, it's a very stark contrast. And I agree with you about the corner too.
Can I chime in really quickly? This historic district was designated for its it's for its history and its geography. It was not designated for its architecture, which at the point when it was designated, we didn't have cultural significance in our criteria, but it was not architecturally significant, and that's why it has its own set of guidelines, because that's unique. And that's one of the reasons that having CMX 5, CMX 8 in this district has, in other districts, you all have reduced the height because of compatibility, but in this district, it has been generally allowed to have greater height because of it not being architecturally significant district.
I just have to say that in a strange way, it's concerning, and I understand it's concerning me that that's what's destroying the fabric of the neighborhood, exactly that. And so when I look at this, and maybe that again is out of our purview, I can see this infilling into a kind of building that actually was not what the neighborhood was. And I understand it wasn't architectural, just very hard to look at it when generally what we're doing is preserving the fabric of the neighborhood, to feel that you're doing something that is going to lead to the unraveling of that fabric, which again is not in our purview. I understand that, but it's just hard to suddenly change gears.
I think this is a good example of a project and per Brittany's report that meets the guidelines, in spite of the guidelines being for this. I mean, Welton Street is one of the only places where we look at a historic building and don't talk about even tearing it down, right? Or some of the infill and other things that Gary mentioned, and I think I can remember at least 2 or 3 other 4 or 5-story buildings that'll be within a block or two, right? Based on reviews in the last year, which are also projects approved per the Welton Street guidelines. So, from my perspective, I think a lot of the window details, design guideline components that will come back in a phase 2 review will be really interesting to see and make a big difference in how it feels. But it really feels like it's met the spirit of the guidelines and the current framework, you know, that the team 19 is working with it. So I think for those reasons, I agree with staff and approval of the project. It's consistent.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I agree, and it kills me to do so because I think that was, I really wish that there were more contributing buildings. We call them non-contributing, but they're still old, and they still tell the story of what happened to Five Points and how people live there.
That's what the cultural identity component
Yeah.
is really problematic.
Yeah.
Because all the things that were contributing to 5 Points cultural identity are being wiped out, with the exception maybe of the Smithsonian. And these are businesses that are, they were historically Black-owned businesses that contributed to the character of the neighborhood and the region, and they were in small retail storefronts. So I think that's where the anomaly is. I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
And maybe that shouldn't be a criteria for it.
Yeah, no, it breaks my heart.
Counterproductive.
It breaks my heart.
Yeah.
It's a similar conversation, I think, to all of the solar panels that we wish we could improve.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
I mean, as it's written now, I don't think that there's any case against the proposed project, but I don't disagree with the larger interaction of the social and the actual built environment as a context. It's just that, as we've said, and I think we've mentioned purview a lot in this conversation. For what is within our purview, guidelines as currently adopted.
So I'd like to revisit, because it sounds like most people are in agreement that, as our guidelines are written, this is a very unique district since it is culturally significant but not architecturally. I'd like to move the conversation more towards, do we have any other feedback we want to discuss on administration? Since this is phase 1, those could be addressed in phase 2. So we've heard, and Gary kind of mentioned operation of the windows will have a really big impact on that, and having some difficulty with that corner. Is there anything else that you want to provide feedback to the applicant on? Or maybe, is there anything that needs to be a condition?
Well, I think the suggested motion should have a condition that the support of the floating corner be addressed in the next submittal.
Do others agree with that?
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting page 6, that has the massing study, which sort of focuses on the street front without the setbacks. And we talk about, being a 1- and 2-story district. This is kind of a 3 and 4, but if you look at that generically as an early 20th century streetscape, I think it speaks to the nice job that the team did balancing what folks will experience as they're walking down the street, as opposed to the 10,000 foot view. Just stark, but I think the masonry corners is a fair condition, but I feel like almost everything else could be a design detail.
Any other comments? Who would like to try the motion?
I'll try it and see if anybody agrees.
That works.
Madam Chair, I move to recommend approval of the historic hardship, the violation of the upper story setback along the alley for section 12.4.7.5.c of the Denver zoning code, and conditionally approve application number 2022-COA-494 for the phase 1 mass form and context at 2907 Wellington Street as per 5 Points Historic Cultural District Design Standards and Guidelines, 4.1 through 4.5, 4.7 through 4.11, 4.16, 4.18, 4.21, 4.23, 4.25, 4.27, character defining features of the 5 points. Historic Cultural District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the condition that the detailed submittal provide further study and development of the floating corner at 29th and Vaughn.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Graham, for seconding. Your discussion of the motion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes unanimously, and the project is conditionally approved.
I stumbled over historic because I think that word is wrong. I think it should be historical hardship. Because if it was a historic hardship, it would be a hardship that existed. I think it's semantic. I'm not suggesting to change anything.
Get past it. Okay.
Mr. Grammarian.
The next design review project today is 2022-COA-498, which is at 69 Alati Street. Yep, and I'm back. Okay. So 69 Alati Street is constructed in 1888, is identified as a non-contributing building in the district designation for Baker neighborhood historic district. The primary structure is a gable-on-gable Queen Anne structure with alterations circa 1960. The property is surrounded to the south by a story-and-a-half Queen Anne structure, and on the north by gable roof garage and one-story terrace house. One-story terrace houses, excuse me. 69 Alati Street lot is 50 feet in width and features an open side yard to the south. The back of the lot currently has a one-story non-historic garage. The applicant is requesting to demolish the existing non-historic garage and construct an ADU structure in its place. Pictured here are the existing streetscape studies. Pictured here is the proposed site plan. Sound like Jesse. Pictured here are the proposed roof plans and floor plans. The ADU will be 34 feet 5 inches by 28 feet 6.5 inches and will be 23 feet 9.5 inches in height. The ADU will have a 2-story gable roof portion with shed roof dormers of varying lengths and a 1-story shed gable roof portion on the north side. The ADU roof will be clad in Owings Corning asphalt shingles in the color estate gray. The ADU walls will be clad in LP Precision 38 series lap siding with a smooth finish and a 4-inch reveal and decorative scallop shingles at the gable end. The ADU will feature aluminum clad wood casement windows and full light and half light fiberglass doors. The ADU will feature simple lantern style sconces at the entry doors and a directional security light over the garage doors. Pictured here is the proposed streetscape study showing the ADU. Staff have concerns about the ADU structure, specifically the building's overall scale, form, and articulation. The ADU structure is large with a 2-story massing projecting to the south where it will be visible from public vantage points. The massing of the ADU reads more like a tandem house structure than an ADU. The ADU has an overly complex roof form featuring shed dormers of various sizings and a 1-story bump out that reads as a shed roof on the east and north elevations and as a gable roof on the west elevation. Beyond having a complex roof form, the roof pitches are shallow and are not compatible with the surrounding historic context. The proposed window proportions and window rhythms do not fit in the surrounding historic structures. The proposed windows appear short and wide, and placements appear complex, conflicting with the tall, narrow proportions and clearly defined aperture rhythms found in the district. Finally, the proposed cladding materials, particularly the location of the banding details and the decorative shingles, do not fit with the context and should be restudied. Staff is recommending denial of the application, citing guidelines 4.5, 4.6, 4.8, 4.11, 4.18, 4.19, 4.20, and character defining features for the Baker Neighborhood Historic District. Staff would like to note that the RNO reviewed an earlier version of the proposed ADU and provided comment on September 22nd, 2022. The RNO was supportive of an ADU at this location but felt that the design should better address concerns about massing and neighborhood compatibility. A copy of the RNO comments is included in the application packet for your review. Finally, the applicant included a study of secondary structures in the district. Several of the examples provided are non-historic buildings, and the historic buildings shown do not support the proposed ADU design. That's what she has. Any questions for staff? All right, let's hear from the applicant. Great, you can unmute yourself when you're ready, and please start with your name and address for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, this is Maya Booth. I'm the owner, so 69 Elati Street is my address. I just wanted to introduce myself, and Jim is going to talk more about the design detail and some of the revisions, but I just wanted to put a face to a name, or at least a voice to the name and to the project. So again, my name is Maya. I am a Denver native, grew up in Wash Park, and have a long family history in Denver. I'm a 6th generation Coloradan and have a very much a fondness for Denver, and especially historic neighborhoods in Denver. My great-great-great-grandfather was the mayor of the Highlands before it was annexed into Denver, and was sort of a figure and had an office in the Highlands area. So my family has a long history, and again, a great appreciation that has been passed down to me for historic Denver. And I do a lot of research on the history of my home and my family history in the downtown Denver area. I bought this home when I was just about to turn 26 in 2018, so that I could plant down roots near my family where I grew up. And it's been my primary residence ever since, and I love the home. It's very near and dear to me. I describe it to people as my baby. And really my intent with this project was to create an addition to the property that I could rent as a long-term rental, so that I could continue to live in Denver and hopefully have a family of my own and support that both as additional income for me, and then also opening up a space for someone to rent long-term and live. And the intent of the design was really to have a space where more than one person could live, so that a small family or a pair of roommates or a couple could live comfortably with sort of a semi-private space, but also affordably in kind of a smaller structure that feels like a home, that has a yard that would be shared with my home, the primary home. I personally really love Baker because it is so central and so close to South Broadway and downtown Denver, but also feels like a retreat and a getaway from that urban, broader environment. And so I wanted to create a space where someone else could enjoy that, but also be comfortable and have space to kind of live and not feel too cramped. And so that is the kind of constraints that we were working in, and Jim's going to talk more about the sizing of the upstairs and the downstairs and how we determined that. But that's just a little bit about me, and I think I'll give Jim the rest of the time.
I'm pausing. Oh, not yet. Senator James. Thank you. You should be able to unmute yourself when you're ready.
Okay, this option just popped up. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yes, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and fellow board members. My name is Jim Keaveney. I'm the architect on this project. I'm with KSA Architects. I've worked with Maya on this for quite some time now. As you know, this project is an ADU in the back of the lot, and basically what the intent, as Maya explained, is basically just to provide some type of middle market housing, a place to rent out for her on her property. And we've been working with the neighborhood, the style, the architectural style, et cetera. I know there are a few concerns from city staff, but firstly, I'll just go over some of the materials and the elements. Looking at the different styles in the neighborhood, there's quite a bit of Queen Anne shingle style. But basically what we started out with a little bit of a lower sloped roof with this shingles, with lap siding, and basically came up with this design. This was presented in front of the Baker Historic Neighborhood, their RNO, and overall they were in favor with the concept of the ADU. I think they had a little bit of concerns. We went back to the drawing board, and came up with some alternate styles with roof pitches, etc. So the end result is what you're looking at is a little bit steeper pitched roof at 8.5 as opposed to the initial 3 to 12 pitch roof. But for the most part, this ADU will be in the back of the lot, just as typically they are, right up to the alley. It is a little bit bigger than the existing home, at least in vertical height, but overall the living size is not much. Actually, it's smaller than the living size of the house at the front, the non-conforming structure. The reason being is it just seems larger. As you can tell, as the plans read, there's a 2-car garage. So we are replacing the existing 2-car garage in the back as part of this ADU. So that's what gives it a little bit of oversized. So there is basically it's a one bedroom and a study at the first level, and two bedrooms. So, if we were going to reduce the overall size of the footprint, as you know, this has to be a 1.5-story project for an ADU. That would limit the size of that second floor. So if we were only going to be designing, let's say, a garage at the first level, our livable space would only be about 440 square feet. So the goal is to add a little bit more livable area at the ground floor, which helps us with the second floor level. Besides that, again, we've increased the pitch of the roof, and to make that a little bit more livable at that top floor, we've had to add a couple dormers to either side, just for the staircase and over one of the bedrooms. So there's certain elements that we've added just to comply with a steeper pitch that seems to be more compatible with the neighborhood. The overall height is slightly smaller than the Queen Anne to the south, the next door neighbor. But as as a thought, we could have, Maya could have built in a tandem house on this property. She decided not to. Tandem house could be 2.5 stories in this zone district, the URH 2.5. We just decided, or at least she decided, to go to develop an ADU. So with that being said, I think there's certain design elements I think we understand that we have to probably take a look at, but overall, I think the point is we were just really trying to develop an ADU that's livable, that's for in size with, let's say, a small family. And that's really what the goal was. We did look at some of the neighboring ADUs in the neighborhood. There are quite a few, some carriage houses, some are non-historic, some are contributing, some are non-contributing. So it's a little bit difficult when we did an analysis, but we did see a few that were just about this large. Most of them were a little bit smaller, but again, our goal was just to kind of provide something that could be livable in the backyard. And again, there's not too much that would be visible from the street. I think, as you know, exterior elevations bring a vantage view as if you are about 15-20 feet up in the air, as opposed to a sidewalk view. And there is a small portion of the ADU that's visible from the street, let's say on the north side of the lot. But regarding that, we did make some design elements since our previous submittal to the RNO. We did add some character to the rear alley elevation, et cetera. So as a result, the plans that you have in front of you are what we have, and we're happy to answer any questions. I believe Maya may not be available for any more questions. I think she had to jump off, but I'll be available the continuation of this and to answer any questions you guys may have.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any questions? I have a couple. So it looks in plan like the wall along the alley is one flush wall, but in elevation, it looks like the articulation of the siding is trying to make it look as though, you know, the two-car garage portion is kind of separate from the rest of it. So is that just being done with trim or downspout, or are you actually going to?
Yeah, that's just to break it up a little bit. I mean, it's more trim. There is a slight gable fascia on the back there, but that's only as a result of when the Baker neighborhood meeting, they wanted to see some more detail on the alley. So it's really just a variation in trim, and you're correct.
And it also, the keynotes on the elevations say that it's 4-inch lap siding, but it looks to me like maybe you have two different sizes of lap siding that you're using in elevation. Is that, could you clarify?
I think it should all be the same. I think maybe I can check that, but it should all be the same siding. And maybe it's the pen weight. I'm not really sure, but I can always take a look at that. But the intent is to keep a uniform siding with.
Okay, and then it would be 4-inch.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If anyone on the line would like to provide a public comment on this project, please use the hand raise button at this time. Oh, there we go. See, let me share the clock and unmute whenever you're ready.
Hi there, my name is Ozzie Friedrich at 528 West First Avenue. I'm the chair of the Baker Landmark Committee, though the committee has not taken any further votes on this updated version of the design you're looking at here today, so I'm just speaking for myself. I'll be really interested to hear the commissioners' discussion on this. Our committee found it a challenging project to review and potentially an important precedent since we expect to see more larger ADUs proposed in the future. The combination of, the very significant scale of the ADU and then the low non-contributing house in front, but then, a definite neighborhood scale along Fox, I think makes it a challenging project to review. I think I still have some scale and compatibility concerns paralleling the staff report's comments. I would like to say that the complexity noted in the staff report is somewhat resulting from our neighborhood committee's comments. And I think the design has improved since the first one that we saw, even if maybe it's not all the way there yet. My own home is around the corner on the alley and includes a 2-story, 2-bedroom, 700 square foot carriage house. I would love to see, a solution found here that would allow for a family to live at the rear of the lot. I think it would contribute to the neighborhood in a great way if a suitable design solution can be found. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments at this time? Use the hand raise button. Thank you. I don't see any hand raised. Okay. All right.
The question before we start. Can you explain the difference between a tandem house and an ADU in terms of how we would be looking at the design?
Looking at Bridget, because she's our resident zoning expert. But I do know that an ADU has very specific form requirements and the size. It's like no more than 1,000 square feet floor plate.
Right. More restrictive for an ADU.
Yeah, so it's
a tandem house. But were we to review a tandem house, were we to say?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking if we were to review this.
No. I'm just trying to understand. Were this to be called a tandem house, does it have the same restrictions in terms of its relationship to the main house. If you know what I'm talking about.
Got it. Landmark review as opposed to like
Landmark
the,
review. Landmark
the,
review,
I would,
exactly.
got it.
Landmark review,
Um,
in terms of its compatibility with the main structure.
so we look at tandem houses slightly differently because is it like a two-part process for a mass forming context and then a design detail, because this is basically a second primary structure on the lot. For an ADU, it is not, it is a secondary structure, and so we look at it as a one review. But it is, for both of them, we're looking for compatibility with the historic context. So materials, form, massing, fenestration, all of that stuff, we're looking for compatibility there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But an ADU is looking to subordinate to the primary, whereas a
Correct.
isn't necessarily becomes the second primary.
It's like, so, yeah, and the other thing too is that a tandem house, we're looking for it to be subordinate to the block, like not necessarily, or compatible with the block. So if it was a 5-story zoning here and the block is 3 stories or 2.5 stories, you wouldn't necessarily get a tandem house at 5 and everything else is 2.5. So for this block, you have a 1.5 story next door and a bunch of 1 stories on the rest of the block. So you're looking for something that will not be way out of scale for a tandem house, just like you would for an ADU. That said, the ADU needs to be more subordinate to the historic house. Does that make any sense there?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Glad you asked that question, yeah. Very helpful. All right, let's go ahead and move into deliberation. How does everyone feel
Well,
about
I mean,
that?
I was just thinking about what's just been said. When it comes to subordination, if the primary structure is larger, that would generally permit a larger ADU in terms of subordination. And I think that's a problem with this design, is that the primary structure is so modest that this as an ADU just seems out of proportion, out of character in terms of size, and I'm not even addressing kind of the design itself, the stylistic elements that would make it compatible with the neighborhood or not. And I think it misses on that in that case as well. And it looks too much like a small, modest, modern house in a suburb somewhere, rather than an ADU in this district. And that has to do with form and materials selected, or at least the way the materials are represented in the drawing. My perspective.
I think, yeah, with respect to size, I mean, just the 2-car garage portion at 20 by 30 feet, a generous size 2-car garage, and then in relationship to the rest of the structure. Kelly, your question was one I had also about the sort of projecting bay on the garage. Kind of reads that way in elevation. But I just think that the scale and the street view showing, the existing and then the proposed, it almost swallows the house up on it, which is troubling. And the staff report mentioned the same.
And I think the other thing I struggled with on this one is the 2-story portion is on the south side of the site, whereas the primary structure is on the north side of the site. So it's almost making like it even more visible. It's like the side where there's no structure blocking it is the tallest portion. And it almost seemed like if it was mirrored or something, I'd be curious as to how much would be visible from the street at that point. Because it's just, we've approved some ADUs that are taller than the primary structure. I can recall specifically Curtis Park, a few, and a Baker, and my recollection seems to be that oftentimes those had very small side setbacks between the homes. So you were kind of more dealing with the height being visible above the primary structure, whereas here we've got a very big side yard that you're really seeing a lot of it. And I think that's what I was struggling with, is it's just very prominent from the street, and there are a lot of modest structures, side structures on this block.
I think the comments too about window proportion and scale, it's a lot of sliders and casement windows, which are not typical and, called out in guideline 4.8. Gary, to your point, I think the material, the shingles and the last siding are appropriate material, but applied to a volume or a shape that seems out of place in this context.
And the reason I asked about that projection, whether the wall projects at the alley for the 2-story or for the 2-car garage portion, is because to me, it'll seem very, I understand they were trying to break down the mass architecturally using the materials that they chose, but if that's all one flat facade, it just feels a little disingenuous. Like you wouldn't see that in the historic context. You would see an actual wall projection where the materials made those gestures. So it just doesn't seem to fit the historic pattern of a secondary structure.
The north and south elevations show that lower gable projecting at the eve at least, but that is another sort of something to reconcile around where that, what would be the corner trim board, just a path separating the same material on either side without a break. So I agree, that's a challenging thing to blend into a existing context.
And it's tough because I understand what the applicant's trying to do and, appreciate increasing, density in our neighborhoods by adding ADUs, but it just doesn't seem compatible with the primary structure or the block in historic context. And I mean, I guess my first recommendation is if it needs to be, this large, can some of that be more pushed behind the primary structure so it's not so visible from the side? I don't know what else to offer as far as, if we have any productive feedback that can help the applicant as they work forward.
I think one way to address our concern about its size and scale is to reconsider whether this is really a 2-bedroom ADU or not, because it's not really a 2-bedroom ADU. I don't think, if that study is conceived as a second bedroom, I don't know why anybody want to enter an ADU through a bedroom. And it's kind of a functional problem. It's kind of like pushing, the programs kind of push the building into part of its incompatibility with the neighborhood. I don't think this will function as a 2-bedroom unit. It'll function as a 1-bedroom unit with study. And so maybe there needs to be some reconsideration of exactly what's trying to be achieved here. And hopefully reconsidering that will actually look at it, creating a smaller, more compatible mass on the site.
Staff would, we kind of discussed windows, we talked about materials, there. We haven't talked about the roof, and that's something staff had mentioned about kind of the complexity of the roof with the dormers, 2 different roof heights. Did anyone have concerns about? I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think the roof seems super complex. To me, the massing is the bigger issue. I guess I'll just leave that there. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree, but.
Well, there's 3 different roof pitches. It might be better if there were 2 different roof pitches. It's that kind of lean-to on, I guess that would be the north side. Where the pitch of the 2-story, the 2nd story kind of breaks, just makes it look kind of odd. That simplified form might only have you know, a predominant roof pitch with shed style dormers, and that would simplify it to be more compatible.
All right, any other comments? Not, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure, Madam Chair, I will make the motion. I move to deny application 2022-COA-498 for the ADU at 69 Elati Street as per design guidelines 4.5, 4.6, 4.8, 4.11, 4.18, 4.19, 4.20, character defining features for the Baker Neighborhood Historic District, present testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks, Julie. Thank you, Graham. All right. Further discussion? All for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes unanimously as the project is denied. You can continue to work with staff to address these issues. I hope that deliberation helps provide the feedback you need.
Okay, all right, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it.
So next project on design review is 2022-COA-499 at 121 West Cedar Avenue. Oh, I have to turn the screen. Video on, okay, I'm Brittany now. So the applicant Roger Day is proposing to demolish a fire damaged rear addition and construct a new rear addition at 121 West Cedar Avenue. Here. The applicant is requesting a recommendation from the LBC to the Board of Adjustment for a side setback violation of the west side of the home due to the asymmetrical placement of the home in the lot, with the existing setback on the east. All this typo, sorry. The existing setback on the east is 4 feet and it's only 1 foot 5 inches on the west. The proposed addition will be inset 2 feet 3.5 inches from the west property line. However, it will still approach the side setback. Landmarks tax feels the side setback encroachment is minimal, and in doing so will not negatively impact the surrounding historic context. Okay, the photographs on this slide show the fire damage to the non-historic rear addition that will be demolished to accommodate the new addition. The structure is stuccoed with a yellow stucco visible in the side elevation and the front facade image. To address the fire damage, the rear roof slope will be demolished for a total demolition of 24.5%. The new rear addition will tie into the existing roof ridge. The north, east, and west roof slopes will remain intact. However, the roof trusses will be reinforced internally to maintain the existing roof. As shown in the roof plan, the proposed addition will be inset from the historic structure. On the front facade, no changes will be made to the historic structure. The dormers on the new rear addition will be minimally visible. The dormers are proposed to be clad in a straight edge fiber cement shingle. The dormers will encroach into the bulk plane by 8 inches. The encroachment is minimal, located at the rear, and will not negatively impact the surrounding context. Staff feels the bulk plane encroachment qualifies for an administrative adjustment. At the rear, the fire damaged non-historic addition will be demolished and replaced with a 2-story addition. The new addition will be clad in 3-coat stucco, transitioning to a 4-inch reveal smooth finished fiber cement lap siding on the upper floor. The addition will have a new rear deck and rear egress porch with French doors. The man door allowing access to the rear deck will be covered with metal and with a metal and glass canopy. On the east elevation of the addition, a double hung window will be installed. Awning windows will be used in the dormer. Windows are aluminum clad wood on the east elevation and fire rated metal on the west elevation. In the east roof slope of the historic structure, 2 new skylights will be installed. Skylights are flat mounted on a side roof slope and set back from the front facade. So staff are recommending that the commission recommend an approval of setback violation to Board of Adjustment. The commission recommended an administrative adjustment for the bulk plane violation and approve the proposed addition at 121 West Cedar Avenue based on guidelines 2.28, 3.1, 3.3 to 3.9, character defining features for the Baker Historic District. That's what I got. Are there any questions? All right. Let's hear from the applicant.
Hello?
It's
Yes.
Roger and David.
Yes.
Yes,
My name's Roger Day. I'm the architect on this project. I live at 219 South Bannock Street. And in that the staff review is very complete and thorough, I'm open to any questions that the commission may have to present.
that's a record time for today.
Hello? Am I supposed to talk? Hi, this is David Albiero, 121 Cedar.
Great, David. Yeah, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just basically we had a fire. The neighbor's house caught on fire and caught the rear of our house on fire. So we're trying to rebuild the porch in the existing footprint pretty much. And that's about all I got. That was the first time I've ever done anything like this. I apologize. I don't have much to say.
It's quite all right. Okay, are there any questions for the applicant?
I have a question for the architect. There is a note, Anne here, by the way. There is a note on your sheet number 19 about the shingles, about the specification of the shingles.
It's Roger. Yeah. Taylor didn't know.
Oh, okay. Roger, there's a note about the specification of the shingles. And my question actually was a shingle selected and submitted to staff? And it might be in there. It might just be that I missed it going through
The shingle siding or the shingle roofing?
I think it's the roofing, and it says precise shingle specification to be determined by availability of several potential products in direct consultation with the immediately.
Okay,
I just wanted to know.
We're basically going to be matching the existing roof. However, the available products may float left and right to depending on availability. We'll be close to the color, we'll be close to the texture, and that determination will happen once we complete demolition of the fire damage, because we don't know how we're going to splice that together, et cetera, et cetera. These are minute details that should not affect things that are significant. We're also covering up, we're also dealing with the repair of an earlier fire that structurally compromised some of the ceiling in the living room at the other end of the house, but that's a secondary issue.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? I just have a question about I'm looking at the east elevation and on page 18. And so when you're looking at the side of the addition, so the intent is for the wall to be stucco at the base, and then where it meets kind of the adjacent existing roof to have a trim board and then slab siding above. Is that correct?
Let me pull this back up. I don't have it in front of me.
Roger, I'll share it real fast.
Can you share it with me?
Yeah, there it is. Is it this elevator? It's the rear? It's the east. That one? Side. Yeah. This one? No. That one. There we go. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, there we go. At the bottom, well, and then west too.
Okay, on the first floor, we're effectively matching the existing stucco with the stucco. I cannot zoom in here to again, Control+.
well, you can't control our screen.
No,
Get it.
and the keynotes are not visible on your screen.
It is in our packet, though.
Okay,
If you look at the
yeah, you confused me with, I don't know what we're
I think it's-
actually. Can you point to what you're speaking of?
So I think what Erin is pointing out to us is that it's the wall here that's
Oh,
under,
the vertical plumb.
right here. So there's
Well,
lap siding here.
Okay, because, okay, on those small corner gables, is that what you're speaking of? The
It's no,
north elevation?
nope, it's on the east and the west, the sides. It's the lap siding right under the roof.
Oh,
I
okay,
was just curious, you know, if that was the.
okay,
and-
the separation of the change from the siding to the stucco, or from the stucco to the siding to the roof structure. There'll be because we're adding a second floor, and because there's always a separation and an expansion between different levels, a change of materials seemed appropriate.
Okay. And then at the rear elevation, it kind of looks like one side wall is a little bit shorter than the other, like
Yes,
the,
it is.
like.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Is that right?
That's only because the existing basement door, which is indicated on this frame as the item number 1, the one with the arrow on the side with the shed, the existing basement door is immediately below the existing exterior door. And therefore, we needed to continue with the existing foundation perimeter. And because the house is only, is 2 feet 5 inches off the property line, and the addition was built there in I believe in the 70s or 60s possibly, to accommodate the then existing basement entry, which was from exterior grade. Is that clear as mud? The house is asymmetric on the lot, but and we're trying to keep the access to the cellar where it always has been. And that's more evident on the plan views rather than the elevations. But because it's asymmetrical,
Okay.
just trying to clad things
Thank you.
similarly.
Are there any other questions? Yeah. Great, thank you for your time, both of you. Is there anyone on the line who would like to make a comment on this project? Please use the hand raise button if you would.
Not seeing any hands go up.
Okay.
No.
Okay, all right. So we'll move into deliberation. What does everybody think? How do you feel this addition meets the guidelines?
I think it does. I think it's inset from the primary structure. It's tucked nicely back behind. In all ways, seems to fit the bill.
Yeah, I agree with staff assessment. Yeah, I agree as well. Sorry, I grilled the applicant. At first I wasn't understanding why the material changed on the sides, but I didn't think about how it tied into the back.
I think it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, right, yeah. Great, well, we don't need to talk about things that are obvious, so. I
Madam
think
Chair, I'll
clear.
make the motion, yeah. I move to recommend approval of an historic hardship with side setback violation on the west property for section 12.4.7.5.c of the Denver zoning code, and recommend approval of the height floodplain violation per section 12.4.5.3 of the Denver zoning code, and approve application number 20 4022-COA-499 for the addition at 121 West Cedar Avenue per design guidelines 2.28, 3.1, 3.33 through 3.9, character defining features for the Baker Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Second. Graham for the motion, Aaron for seconding. Call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? All right, motion passes unanimously. And the project is approved. Great. Right. The next project we have up for design review is 2022-COA-495, which is at 3423, 3425 Union Street. And I'm Crystal now. They're all on vacation together in Italy. I'm very jealous. So here we go. The property at 3423 to 3425 North United Street is located within the Otter Highlands Historic District and is a non-contributing structure to the district. It's built in 1955 and is a brick tipped roof 2-unit apartment structure. On the right are photos of the existing conditions of the duplex structure with a map on the left showing its mid-block location. The applicant is proposing a full second-story top addition and an overall redesign of one-story structure. Due to the scale and redesign of the whole structure to a modern Italianate style, this project is being reviewed as a new infill construction and through a two-step infill design review process. On the top of the slide is a streetscape comparison to the new structure. The redesigned structure will fall within the height found on the block. The structure will now stand at 22 feet 3 inches tall. Other structures on the block range from 14 feet 4 inches to 25 feet 4 inches, 22 feet 9 inches to 24. Proposed ground plan shown at the bottom of the slide for the redesigned structure shows that the building will remain in alignment with other structures on the block. The primary structure will have one unit with an entrance facing the street and is consistent with other entrances facing the street on the block and in the district. Here you can see the new proposed floor plans for the 2 units and the compatibility demonstration. The redesign is based off other multi-unit Italianate structures in the district. The applicants did paired windows with lintels, sills, and a decorative cornice, as well as a hipped roof porch for the front unit. Here's the proposed site plan for the property. The overall footprint remains mostly the same, except a bump out at the rear unit at the rear elevation. Here you can see the existing and proposed front elevations for the redesigned structure. The structure is designed to be a modern Italianate style and will have 2-story rectangular massing and utilize a flat roof form. The proposed windows of the front facade are paired tall and narrow 1:1 proportions and are characteristic of the historic district and aligned symmetrically on the front facade. There's also a decorative cornice at the front roof line and a new hipped roof front porch with a front entrance that better relates to the street. Here you can see the north side elevations of the structure showing the reconfiguration of the windows. As you can see, the design again utilizes tall windows as well as the horizontal ones that will be less visible to the street as they are set back. Here you can see the south elevations of the structure showing the reconfiguration of the windows again, and those 1:1 proportions. Here you can see the bump out at the rear elevation, which is not typical, but will not be visible from the front facade. Here you can see the rear elevations of the structure. Here, the window proportions are mostly different from the other 3 elevations. Here you can also see that the bump out at the second floor rear elevation, which is not typical, but will not be visible from the front facade or any public-facing elevation. It's also unclear what window style is proposed under the bump out as it is at the first floor. It may be helpful to have the applicant clarify the intent, whether it's one large window or something different. Finally, these are the isometrics for the proposal. The proposed top addition and alterations to the structure are compatible and fit the surrounding historic context. Therefore, staff is recommending approval. I'm going to really quickly, just for the record, say what those guidelines are, because we generally do that. And that would be 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.10, 4.15, 4.16. There you go. Any questions for staff?
Question.
So this is called a pop out. Right. I think that might be my question. Yeah.
talking. I mean, what is that?
Why, yes, exactly. It doesn't, I guess I would ask, does the amount of demolition that is happening to this little building fall under the structure of, under the category of threshold? I mean, I understand that it's being reviewed as a two-part deal.
Yeah.
And so maybe it makes no difference at all. It's just that it's a little odd when you read it. And so can you just talk about why it wasn't just a demolition contract and then
I don't know enough about the project to know why it was not initially demolition. It's a non-contributing building, and so demolition of the roof and going up does not require public hearing or any of that stuff. You all reviewed a few years ago, pre-COVID times, you all reviewed a pop top similar to this. That was a total redesign of a building in Montclair.
Yeah.
And so these are unusual, but we did get them. So for non-contributing buildings, they're keeping the first floor and they're reconfiguring it and making it more compatible with the historic context, which is really what the goal is for a non-contributing building, to become to either to not be even more non-contributing, but to remain non-contributing or be more compatible. I don't know. Yes. Thank you.
Good question, though. You're wrong.
Yeah. Any other questions for Seth? Maybe we should just, I think, did you mention the Arno?
Oh, yeah. I didn't mention Arno review. Okay. So this one was the Arno. It originally was a 4-unit. So it was 2 units on the first floor and 2 on the second floor. The original proposal. And so the Arno called it out and said, hey, you're not zoned for 4 units. And so they trimmed it down and now it's a 2-unit proposal.
So the Arno letter we have in our packet says it's 4 units. It's actually a 2. So because that was things to review. And those exterior staircases that are referenced in their letter are also gone. Did they make any other changes since their meeting with the Arno? Like, did they have a comment about the porch being undersized?
I don't remember. So I think it's a good question for either the applicant to address or for the applicant to, or for you all to ask them.
Okay. All right. Is that applicant present?
Yes.
Great. You can.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Jorge Guerte. I'm the project manager for this project. And I'm at the 863 Santa Fe Drive, Denver, Colorado. And yes, we follow the recommendations from the RNO. And I don't know, do you have any other questions?
Yeah, we can move into questions if you have nothing else that you wanted to mention.
You have up to 10 minutes to talk about the project if you'd like to.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty straightforward. It's 2 existing units. We're just going to do a pop-top of the building for a second story and facade renovation, and pretty much that's it.
All right. Cool. Are there any questions for the applicant?
I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to the adding and subtracting of the masonry in this project? Because with, you're adding the story and you're also reconfiguring existing opening sizes. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Well, in terms of the brick, I mean, that's the existing, we're following the existing brick cladding of the buildings. So the modern Italian style, the research we did, that's kind of how it looks like with the brick. And then the window pattern, again, we took it from the Italian modern style, and that's the pattern that we came up with. And then in the back unit, we have that bump out on the second floor because that's going to be the owner's building unit. So he wanted a little bit of bigger unit for him. So that's why we have that little bump out and break up a little bit the boxiness of the building because it's pretty much 4 walls on a roof. Did I answer your question?
Not really. Maybe, is it possible to bring up one of the elevations, like sheet 103? Which side are you talking about? Just one that shows the new and the elevation. Anyone.
I think maybe he's not understanding the question.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
I
there's a
think
lot
you were
of,
wondering-
there's a little echo. Sorry.
I think that you aren't maybe understanding Anne's question. I think that she's asking you about how you're planning to fill in the masonry and is that it?
Exactly, and then add on the second level. Do you have an idea about how that's an approach that you've decided on? About how the masonry is, because there's, for instance, there's no horizontal line that's shown between the base of the existing thing, and I understand that that's a little bit unusual, just a friendly question. How about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not following your question exactly, but yeah, we're just gonna infill with the brick veneer and then open the new windows, and then at the end, we're gonna paint the whole building, the brick, so that then we have an even color of brick.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you all for your time. Thank you.
Oh, actually, I do have one more question.
Sure.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I just thought of it. So did you make any changes to the front porch as a result of the RNO's feedback?
Not to the porch, because they wanted a bigger porch, but there was a long conversation between Landmark or case manager and I think your staff, and we came up with the final solution of what we're showing there. I think the RNO wanted a little bit bigger porch.
And is it Landmark that directed you kind of away from a bigger porch, or you didn't want to make bigger porch, or what was? I'm just trying to understand. Since they mentioned that.
So there's a lot of echo. Can you repeat the question again?
I'm just wondering why the decision was to keep the porch smaller.
Because it goes better with the proportions of the facade. Yeah. Because a bigger porch, then they will cover the front windows. Yeah. Yeah. So
thank you.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Is there anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment on this project? Instructions up. Please use the hand raise button. I'd like to. I am not seeing any hands raised. All right, so let's move into deliberation. Now that everybody feels met with your document.
I think this is one we can file into the interesting asterisks of mid-century preservation in the district without mid-century period of significance, right? And instead of framing something reimagined, kind of cool. I think that it, again, agree with the staff's report that it meets the guidelines, and it's a neat approach to work with some of what's there and make something that will do it was in the name. So, awesome. Certainly won't look mid-century.
No, hold on.
Yeah, I agree with that. Interesting to call it a pop top. There we are.
I'll also be very interested in the details, because the applicant mentioned veneer brick, and my guess is that this is not veneer brick. So how that, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe brick. Anyway, I'll be very interested in seeing how, but that's a detail, so I agree with staff. I'll just be interested.
Make a motion.
I just have one thing. So I agree overall, and I'm not I'm going to support the project, but it was a little bit jarring because it kind of looks like they're trying to be historic, but not. So I think there's enough that's like simplified and kind of oversized windows that are keying it to be new construction. You know, it's kind of referential to a Foursquare, but not because the window form like pairings are so different than what we would see in a Foursquare. But when I first saw it, my only thought was, it's interesting that they're making a mid-century into like Italian / Foursquare. I don't know. Yeah, it was so that
1920s.
yeah, and so that was a little interesting to see. So I guess I just appreciated like the detail level. You know, this next round that we see definitely characterizes it as new construction to differentiate it. But overall, I mean, I think, you know, it's an interesting project and I support it.
I think the fact that it's not security building.
Right. Yeah.
Gives that simple.
Oh, 100%.
Gives a simple leeway.
Yeah. If it were not non-contributing, this would be a completely different conversation.
Absolutely. Madam Chair, I'll move to approve application number 2022-COA-495 for the Pop Top addition and alterations of the structure at 3423 and 3425. For design guidelines 4.3, 4.4, 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.10, 4.15, 4.16, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information in the staff report. Thanks, Graham.
Madam Chair, I'll second that. Thank you, Julie. All right, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? All right, motion passes unanimously. And the mass form and context is approved. We'll see you back for design details. Okay, we do have one more design review project, but it's 3 o'clock. Does anyone need a bathroom break? Just power through. Let's do it. All right. Everybody hold it. Stop drinking water. Okay, so the next project is 2022-COA-503 at 320 Vine Street.
Everyone can hear you.
Yeah, you're breaking up though. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have my regular settings. Do you want me to try going on headphones instead?
You're okay now. Okay now, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so this is 320 Vine. This is design detail for a single family residence with an attached garage. The LPC previously approved this with the condition to provide an accurately scaled streetscape comparison, and that has been provided in the application. Should I continue or?
Yep.
320 Vine is located in the Country Club Historic District. Infill design proposed as a contemporary interpretation of the Tudor Revival style. Tudor Revival features referenced in the design include the asymmetrical facade, a facade dominated by steeply pitched front-facing and overlapping gables, prominent chimney, grouped casement windows with divided lights, and use of multiple cladding materials, including brick, stucco, stone, and the arched doorway. So here's the site plan. So basically you see the attached garage there at the rear, front walkway, front patio, and kind of pathway on the south side of the house. So here, just wanted to review a few changes that have been made to the design since the phase 1 approval. So the top image is the phase 1, the bottom is the phase 2. So you can see the primary alteration that has been made here is that the connecting element that connects to the attached garage has been changed from a pitched roof to a flat roof. But this is at the rear and will not be visible. And please excuse my dog who decided to be next to me with a squeaker. And then you can also see window wells have been added to provide light into a basement space. You can also see there have been some alterations to the fenestration patterns, but staff doesn't have any particular concerns about those. Then here for comparison, at the top is the phase 1 approval. The bottom is the phase 2 proposal. So there have been some alterations here as well, though for the most part, nothing really significant. Some of the window proportions have been changed. A planter has been added, attached to the column at the southwest corner. The wall on the left side was previously adjacent but not connected to the facade. That has now been connected to the facade. Windows at the northwest corner have been changed to French doors framed by windows. So above it was all windows, now the center section is doors. This does create a higher than typical number of doors on the facade. With these doors, the central door and then doors also on the right side. However, since 2 of those sets of doors are using multi-light glazing that kind of aligns with the windows, it's not super obvious, so that it's going to blend in. Also, a very deep egress well has been added immediately adjacent to the entrance. This is a somewhat atypical placement for an egress well. Okay, so to review the proposed materials. So 3 cladding materials are proposed: reclaimed red brick with a lime wash finish, a 3-coat stucco, and limestone tumbled dimensional veneer in a random ashlar pattern. Staff find the combination of materials proposed, the brick, stone, and stucco, to be appropriate, since Tudor Revival style houses typically feature multiple materials and these materials are commonly used. The applicant is proposing to use a reclaimed brick and a tumbled stone veneer. Landmark generally does not allow tumbled masonry or masonry with cobbled, chipped, or rounded edges. It isn't really possible to prevent that with using a reclaimed material, so we realize that reclaim is likely to have some chipping or rounded edges, but staff finds the value of being able to use recycled brick outweighs that, but staff does believe that using a smooth texture stone with a simpler configuration would better follow the guidelines, which require that infill construction be a simplified interpretation of historic designs and clearly identifiable as contemporary construction. The windows and the glazed doors need to be clarified. They are called out in some portions of the application as being metal and other parts of the application as aluminum clad wood. I think either one is fine. It just needs to be clearly identified what is proposed. And for roofing, they are proposing a combination of asphalt shingle, EPDM on the flat section, and then standing seam metal at the entrance. So here you can see the pent roof at the entrance where the standing seam metal is being proposed. That will be in kind of a dark gray color. While standing seam metal is not considered appropriate for the Country Club District in their design guidelines, the amount of metal roofing here is pretty small, and the color, the gray color, will blend with the other roofing. However, since the metal roofing is at the entrance, it will be highly visible. Staff do have some concerns with the column at the southwest corner. Staff is concerned with the change of material proposed here, with the column there really jumping out, since it's the only, since it's done in stone, while the rest of the facade and the second story above it are done in brick. This really places visual emphasis on the column and the overhanging second story. Staff finds that a column clad in brick would provide a more cohesive anchor at this corner. There's also a planter box that is clad in stone that has been attached to that column. Staff finds that this configuration does not reflect district patterns and adds unnecessary complexity to the facade. Planter boxes do not typically attach to columns and typically align with the building foundation rather than being perpendicular. Here just is some views of the rear so that you can see that flat roof connecting element, and then the continued use of the brick and stucco, the rear, and the connected garage. So finally, then, just to wrap up, overall, staff find the proposed infill to be a successful contemporary interpretation of the Tudor Revival style. Contemporary features are primarily in the massing rather than in the details and materials. The infill will be clad in a combination of reclaimed brick, stucco, and limestone tumbled dimensional veneer. Windows and glazed doors feature a traditional multi-light configuration. Sills and headers are stone. Decorative brackets and trim are wood. The use of standing seam metal at the pent roof over the entrance is the primary contemporary metal material detail. And staff is recommending some further simplification of some design elements. The staff recommends approval with the following conditions: to use a single size of stone with a smooth texture and no tumbling, to clad the column at the southwest corner in brick and remove the planter box at the base, and also then to clarify the windows and glazed doors, it's either being aluminum, clad wood, or metal, and to make sure they're labeled accurately throughout the application.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? I just have one question. So you're recommending that a single size of stone with a smooth texture and no tumbling. So that's not to replace the tumbled brick. The tumbled brick, the reclaimed brick would stay.
Correct. It's here. If you look down in the lower left corner, we're proposing, instead of this tumbled stone material that's shown here and this ashlar pattern, to just use a smooth face stone and a simpler configuration of laying the stone.
Gotcha. Because I know you had mentioned tumbled brick, but says that it's because it's reclaimed. Okay, so I just want to make sure I was understanding that right. Any other questions? No? All right. Thanks, Abby. The applicant. So let's go to the podium so that they're on camera.
You know what, I'm gonna stop sharing, and then I'm gonna do the timer on my computer and angle it to you so you can see the timer, so it's not up on the screen, but that way.
Table.
Yeah, it's a table.
Camera.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's really just so the public can see. Oh, I'm sharing the screen.
Want to see you guys forward.
Like the third applicant we've had come in person. There, so I wasn't sure tech-wise.
Sorry. The last applicant just emailed, like, great, I'm approved. And I'm like, no, not yet. Design details, design details. Okay, can you see? Yeah, great, fantastic. Whenever you're ready.
My name is Audrey Gibson. I'm with Palmer North Architecture Studios. I'm going to reiterate a few things that Abigail said, just to elaborate on a few of them. Windows at the dining room were changed to double doors. The intent was to be able to open that up to summertime. Dining room. We also agree we don't feel it changes the front facade. And overall feel is the configuration is essentially the same, but slightly the same. The second floor windows on the front facade were slightly modified just for continuity from the north gable and south gable, so they're the same size now. They were differing before. To clarify, all the windows and doors are intended to be aluminum wood clad. I've already fixed that text error. The flat roof connector at the garage, we feel does not impact the overall look of the house as well, since it is on the back side of the house. The space that you would have already experienced was seen some of the renderings is in the backyard, and that was already flat, so it will feel like the change negatively impacts the overall feel from the already improved. That's one. The two windows on the north side by the dining room were removed. You can see that on the first elevation that we looked at, reduce that overall size. And then on the east facade, which is the back of the house, a couple of the windows were reduced in size for a more appropriate scale. That was a comment on our first meeting. And then we attempted to add some landscape walls at the front yard to help provide some depth to the area to the site, because we are really in the box. I'll elaborate a little bit on that later. We made a few changes per staff feedback and provided by Abigail. We submitted, and she had some feedback already. We made those changes. I just want those to be noted. We did have siding on our first attempt to submit for details, and we changed that to stucco as it's more common in the neighborhood. We had two different kinds of stone. One was random ashlar, one was a bit smaller, and the other one was just a larger scale to provide a little bit of a different use. We modified that to just use one, and we feel they're very similar to some stone patterns that we've seen in the neighborhood, namely 2124 4th Avenue and 2128 4th Avenue. It's really small on the screen, but you could see those pictures of those houses on page 403. The intent was to match and emulate that random ashlar pattern and that tumble look. We're a little concerned if we are to make it more flat and smooth and a more regularized or regular pattern, that would look maybe a bit commercial to blank, and it doesn't really speak to the organic nature of site walls, which is where we're seeing it prominently. We feel that gives a little bit more of an organic feel and blends into the landscape a little bit better. We initially tried to submit with the front patio off the dining room, hence the door, but we removed that as well for Abigail's comments. One of the comments that we received in our phase 1 meeting was the front door height, that it was a bit high. We reduced it to 9 feet. And like I said, we can remove that planter at the front by that column. That's fine. I'm going to speak to a couple more of the comments that were in that brief, staff brief. E2 is in regards to the standing metal seam roof entry. We want to pursue this because it's lower than the main roof maps. We'd like it to read slightly differently, a little smoother of a texture, be a little more in our mind friendly to the human scale. And as seen on A403, the house 2128 4th Avenue has a similar detail, a small standing metal seam roof. Ours is a little bit larger in scale, but we're hoping to use that as a reference. Note 4.5 is in regards to stone sill and headers, which are intended to provide some relief to an otherwise relatively flat roof facade. Stone details can be seen in other houses in the neighborhood, other two houses. Same with the wood brackets. You've seen those in a few houses in the neighborhood. And the design intent for both of those are to be simplified in shape without excessive detail, but to use references from the neighborhood themselves. We're happy that Abigail agrees about the reclaimed brick. We'd really like to pursue that sustainable approach. I already spoke to the use of the stone. We can discuss that. In regards to the egress window on the front, it is a bit unusual. It's very tall. We recognize that. But hopefully, you're not going to see it from the front. It doesn't really change the front facade feel at all. The street, you're not going to see it at all. It is something that our client requested so that you get a little bit more light down there, and it feels like this and less intrusive spot to put an egress window well without being too visible from the front. I think we're okay with changing that column to brick and stone. That's all I got.
My name is Carlos Alvarez from Alvarez Suarez, 121 Adams Street. I think you said it most of it. I just want to make a couple of side comments to all of this. We've been practicing in this neighborhood for the last 20 years. And I feel like restoring the house, like the rules of the game are very clear when you're at an historic structure. But I have to admit the difficulty of building a house like historic neighborhood. Like of all, are not clear. And second of all, I'm not 100% on board with them. So it's been difficult to like, being handheld, like moving around this process. On our first presentation, I actually felt that we were going to get rushed. And you all changed the recommendation and we chose to have larger windows to be clear that it was a house from the year that we lived. But then often all of the recommendations. So anyway, we felt like, oh my God, thank God, we're halfway there. We got bigger windows. This does not look like a Tudor house from whatever, 1900s. We find ourselves in the same boat again. We're like, post something, it feels like we're working really hard on a design that's compatible with the neighborhood, shape, form, and in place. But I feel like guided to try to emulate again breakfast specifically from a Tudor style. So I think we have picked up a lot of those comments. Some degree of hesitation, to be honest, just because the process is taking so long, the client is getting frustrated, we need to get to the finish line. But again, we wish it to be more open than what we've got. So again, we're here like changing the materials. We're trying to be different, like we're told materials for Tudor house are this, this, and this. So once you use those materials, but then they get less interested in taking them away from what they are. So it's like, don't be tableau stone because that's what they did. The Tudor guys did that. So they get flat. So we think we're like going to a clinical looking design. Again, that's one of the things that we chose not to change in our presentations. Like, please let us have like some of these more organic materials. The windows and shapes already kind of accomplished like in newer architecture. But anyway, so I'm not sure if I'm making any sense or not. It's just hard to like be narrow like that. Grew up in a house from the 1800s. It's probably one of the newest houses in town. And then like, I understand that we're trying to protect the history here. We're trying to protect 20 years, 30 years of history, trying to emulate it. But 400 years from now, what are we going to protect? The simple ones that we did afterwards. So there's massive discussion. It's not about this project. I just find out the difficulty of living in a house, historic neighborhood, try to be guided in a way that struggle. Totally off that, but hopefully what we're doing makes sense. You guys could see that.
Thank you. All right, are there any questions for the applicant?
I had a question about stone, just basic. What you told and what staff report said, it's not clear to me what doing what. Maybe it is clear, but I'm not about. So I'm understanding that you want to use a random ashlar stone. And you say tumbles, you don't really mean tumbles. You mean solid.
Yes.
Yes. You know what type of stone you want to use? Like red sandstone. I mean, I couldn't quite tell.
It hasn't specified in the packet.
I saw that. I guess I didn't.
It's Flint Hills Green limestone.
All we said, not necessarily in our neighborhood, but we have looked at a lot of Tudor houses in Shaker Heights, Ohio. Like they did a lot there. There's a couple back then, a couple of really creative ways in which they treated the corners of the houses, and they kind of blended into the landscape. And I thought even back then, it's like, well, that's kind of modern and cool off there. So that's a little bit of what we were trying to do. And it's like split face, more organic. It's a matter of like grabbing the house, anchoring it into the earth. That's kind of what the intent was. Again, go back to Greg and simplify it maybe, but it just seems like we're sterilizing the house. We're hoping to just like pick it up from the ground and
Now, when I first saw, well, I've got, that's discussion.
Yeah, let's hold discussion and questions. I just had one, and this is like so minor. I'm guessing maybe the windows on the north elevation changed position a little bit, and the, just a couple of the heads and sills were, is it just, I just wanted to make sure the windows are in the right position, and it's the heads and sills that need to move to respond, or is it the other way? Okay.
Yes, in conjunction, we were starting to fill out the interiors, and I know we probably wanted to be over the bedside table.
Yeah. Okay. So they'd be moving to the window location. I mainly am asking because I was trying to understand whether they more closely aligned with what's below or if they're off. Okay.
So Patty, just let me know that it's almost impossible to hear when you guys are talking very quietly to the applicant and have your back to the microphone. So
like yelling.
Oh my gosh, you guys are so quiet. It's so awful.
Okay. So Abby, I was just mentioning that on the north elevation, which is on A204, it looks like just a couple windows were moved. So the applicant clarified that the sills and the heads will move to respond to where the windows are and not the other way around. So, great. Any other questions for the applicant? No? All right. Thank you very much. Is there anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment on this project? Please use the hand raise button if you would like to.
See no hands raised.
All right. Abby, any recap? Nope. Okay, then let's move into deliberation. So what did everybody think?
Well, why don't we start with the recommendations?
Yeah, that's what I'm going back to.
I'd like to address the use of stone. I actually like what the applicant is proposing of a split face ashlar pattern that I like what he said about being grounded to the earth, it adding some contrast. It's both historical and very contemporary to do ashlar. It's a timeless application that I think a single-sized smooth stone, it would look like you would possibly get Home Depot and put it on. I think what they're proposing would look very elegant and, is not a strict interpretation, nor is it strictly contemporary. It's a timeless application, which I would go with applicant's request of that, not staff's recommendation.
I agree with what you just said. What I think confused me was, it's the description of the veneer. There's an image that shows random ashlar next to a larger picture, and then it talks about tumbled dimensional veneer, which is not the way an architect would describe that, I don't think, typically. So I agree that a random ashlar split face veneer not only used in the Tudor style, it also has a contemporary context. And my initial reaction to the southwest corner was, why isn't it brick? But I noticed on the other side, on the northwest corner, there is that kind of cascading masonry down into the ground. So I'd be in favor of leaving that corner. The way it terminates and transitions to the brick is a little abrupt, and maybe it needs some kind of a detail that can kind of express that transition. I don't know if that needs to be a condition, but I think that's a suggestion. That when you transition from one material to another, it kind of asks for a detail rather than just putting one material on top of the other.
Yeah.
There's a little, but it's just,
it's projected out of it.
Yeah, it just seems like there's three pieces. There's the brick, there's the little, and then there's the column. And they just don't seem to be as not sure what the word is.
I agree it doesn't have like traditional detailing,
Yeah.
but I do feel like it kind of is more modern.
It is,
than
it is kind of,
So
it's kind of
yeah.
a, yeah.
The process doesn't bother me nor the change material. I'm not an architect, so I can do this, but a lot of like the 80s and 90s when you had like the postmodern, really pared down simplification applications, I can kind of see like that. You know, where just emphasize that it's of its time and it's not a Tudor replica.
That's how I felt too. And I mean, you do see that play in Tudor if you mixing, you know, the stone and the brick. And so I agree, Gary, how, you know, it kind of bookends. There is the site wall on the other side. I thought it was a quite elegant solution, and it does kind of signify that it is temporary and not historic. You know, I think it is a simplified version of a Tudor overall, so I think it was successful in that. And I would agree with what both of you said about the stone and both the ashlar pattern and also keeping it flat on that column. What about does everyone else agree with those comments? Or
Yeah.
do you line with staff?
Benefit of seeing the first application back in July. I agree with the conversation so far and generally the staff report.
So then what about the planter? Because I think that was the next thing. Oh,
Actually, I just wanted to say one thing. I have a friendly comment about lintel. Because the only detail that shows of the lintel shows it really just as basically a veneer lintel on top of a small angle. And maybe the detail hasn't been developed of how the lintel dies into the soffit. But it is such an important detail. And it's very convincing in the rendering. And I think it would be, this is a friendly comment, it would be a pity if it just looked like it was pasted on. And this sort of goes to Gary's idea about how you make a transition from those materials. I'd like to talk about the planter. I'm fine with the planter the way it is, because I think that this again, and we had a little bit, I think, of a difference of opinion with staff when we started this the last time, which is it's not showing a historic pattern of anything, and the planter's not historic. That's fine because it's a contemporary. Yeah, exactly. So I have no problem with the planter.
And I like the way it frames the space in front of the patio too, so you have more of that indoor outdoor.
That's kind of what I like about it, yeah.
That I think it forms a nice function there.
Yeah.
I like it. I would like.
And I think those are all great. I agree. I think it's more about the guidelines. Because, I mean, in my opinion, it's just that this is infill and not historic. And these are the moves that make it clear that this is new construction. And that's why I feel like it is appropriate, with our guidelines. So I just wanted to clarify that. Because not just that I like it, which I do. Okay, so I think the only other staff condition that we haven't discussed was the windows and the glazed doors be either aluminum, plywood, or metal, and accurately labeled throughout. Like that makes sense, but that's our guide.
I'd like to say I heard concerns or the difficulty of doing an infill building, or for that matter, even an addition to a historic building, and how you make it at its own time and still compatible with the architecture in the district or the architecture of the existing building. And it's challenging to write guidelines about that. And nationally, there's a lot of a pretty broad spectrum of opinion about what is appropriate in terms of replication versus of its own time as well. And so I hear the frustration. It's every submittal is its own case, and I think did a great job so far.
Yeah, I think we were grinning when you were saying that because that's the age-old debate about preservation.
Well, and I think you might find 7 opinions here.
Yes. So definitely a fine line to walk, and it's not straightforward. It's very gray, but yeah, I agree, Gary. I think they did a great job of kind of blending the two. Great. Well, who's going to make the motion then?
I'd like to make the motion.
Great.
Just correct me if I've got this right. Madam Chair, I move to conditionally approve application 2022-COA-503 for the design detail of the proposed infill at 320 Vine Street as per Country Club Design Guidelines E1, E2, F1, F3, Design Guidelines 4.3, 4.5, 4.6, 4.8, and 5.3, character defining features for the Country Club Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following condition. Window and glazed doors to be either aluminum clad wood or metal and accurately labeled throughout the application.
Thanks, Ann. Motion and Aaron for seconding. There's no further discussion on the motion. Call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? All right. Motion passes unanimously and the project is officially approved. The one condition. Okay, so that was our last design review project of the agenda today. No discussion or business items? Nope. Except for then I'll go ahead and close the meeting.
I just wanted to know why you're not on vacation, Jen.
Oh, I'm not allowed to take.
Oh, sorry.
Here, can you, if you yell, click, and the recording is.
Everybody else?